Hello, BillWhittle.com members. I'm Steve Groom, Bill Whittle, and Scott Ott, and this is your members-only lightning round. You keep asking.
You're killing me, Larry.
No, but our viewers, our members, our producers, Bill, they keep asking for them, and I deliver, don't I? Every third week.
Yes.
You better believe it.
Yes, you do.
All right, you know what? Just for that, Bill, we're going to start off with you this time.
No.
Oh, you know what?
Retribution. It's ugly.
I try and keep these as light as I can, but we're taping this on Tuesday, September 11, 2018, the 17-year anniversary of the attacks on New York and Washington, D.C. And I have to tell you, Bill, that on this anniversary day, just this morning, Joe Scarborough wrote a column headlined, "Trump is damaging the dream of America more than any terrorist attack ever could." Is there no depth that the professional left, and Scarborough, who used to be a Republican, is among them, is there no depth they won't sink to?
Joe Scarborough can write an article like that because Joe Scarborough had a job for the last 17 years, you know? But for the people that didn't have jobs for the last 17 years, or the last 8 of them, with barely 1% economic growth a year, never broke 2 under Barack Obama, record high unemployment among black Americans for Barack Obama, went to record low unemployment among black Americans, and pretty much the same thing for Hispanics, 4+% economic growth. This is the kind of an article that somebody who doesn't have a job could not possibly write. But Scarborough has a job, and his job is to make provocative statements.
Yeah.
You know, I really do wonder if these people are ever going to grow up. And then as I begin to frame the question in my mind before it even gets to my lips, I already know the answer is no, they won't. You know, my friend Evan Sayed is absolutely right. I cannot recommend this book highly enough. It's a book called The Kindergarten of Eden, and in it he says liberals are proud of the fact they sell millions of copies a year of this book, Everything I Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And they have been emotionally arrested prior to their teens.
Yeah.
They
Age of
really
5.
behave like very small children, which is the age when you have to start being responsible, by the way. It's the age when you start having to be willing to take care of yourself, and something just misses on these people. So he can write that, and they can write Hitler and all the rest of it. And they think that it damages Donald Trump. But it doesn't damage Donald Trump. Comparing Donald Trump to Hitler doesn't damage Donald Trump. It lowers Hitler, and it makes the millions of Jews that died, with their fingernails scratched onto the, poured concrete walls of the gas chambers, which is quite a sight to see. It makes those people's deaths less real. And the same thing when you make the comparison to 9/11. When you say that Donald Trump has done more damage or is doing more damage than the terrorists on 9/11, it doesn't make me think any lower of Trump. Makes me think much lower of Joe Scarborough, if such a thing is possible. Because basically what he's doing, Steve, is he's pulling down the 3,000 people who died that day to make a rhetorical point that is so patently ridiculous that he should be ashamed of himself.
Well, I think if he had shame, Bill, he'd be in a different line of work, or at least on the other side. Scott, I want to give you the flip side of this question, and this is in your neck of the woods. President Trump was speaking this morning at the Flight 93 Memorial in Pennsylvania, and he said there, at this memorial, on this sacred earth, in the field beyond this wall, and in the skies above our heads, we remember the moment when America fought back. I've never considered Trump to be a great orator, but that's some stirring, chilling stuff. Can I just get your response to it?
Yeah, I actually watched most of that speech. I happened to be streaming, believe it or not, MSNBC, which carried that speech live, and I had it kind of streaming on the background while I was researching for the show. And it struck me as a well-written speech, and the appropriate sentiment at the time, and most of the hosts at MSNBC had to agree that in fact that's what happened. What's striking about this is not Joe Scarborough's misunderstanding of Donald Trump. It's his misunderstanding of the effect of the 9/11 attacks on the American people, because it didn't bring down the American dream. It in fact did nothing but steel our resolve. It did nothing but pull us together. It was a seminal moment in this country's history, not because of the damage that the terrorists intended to do, but because of the good that they did not intend that came as a result of that. It created new heroes out of ordinary citizens, and it made us better people because we realized that even though threats seem to exist only on distant shores, they can come here at any moment, and it's our bond together as Americans that makes us strong against these threats. And so if Donald Trump did anything half as good as that, as what those terrorist attacks did to the United States of America, God bless Donald Trump.
Thank you for that, Scott. Let's move on to some lighter fare, shall we? Bill, viewership for Miss America 2019 plunges 23% after the swimsuit portion is cut. Can I see your shocked face?
Which portion of the swimsuit was cut? I missed that.
We're gonna have a burqa competition in Miss America before too many more years.
There's so many people have such, there's so many people on the left especially have such frothingly rabid responses to things like beauty pageants and so on. I have no problem with beauty pageants whatsoever. I've never found them particularly interesting. It's a strange thing to say, but I really do believe it's true. The bathing suit competition in the Miss America pageant is exactly like the bathing suit edition of Sports Illustrated. It is low-grade, over-the-counter porn for people who want to go about that far, and that's about it. I mean, that's really all it is. It's cheesecake, as we used to say. It's beautiful women in very small, skimpy outfits, and I heard a conservative comedian saying, by the way, it's so interesting. He said, when you want to make a woman sexy, you take off all the clothes you possibly can, and before she gets naked, you put her in lingerie or a bathing suit. You want to make a man sexy, you give him a three-piece suit, you show his hands and his head.
That's it.
Everything else is covered from head to toe. But yeah, I mean, it's a little sleazy, I guess, to some degree, that fewer people are watching it because the swimsuit competition went away. My personal reaction to this is that the swimsuit competition shouldn't have gone away. It's a beauty pageant. It's not just a face pageant. It's a beauty pageant. It's an attractiveness pageant. Nobody's got a gun to the heads of these women making them go to these things. They want to go. And the bathing suit competition, swimsuit competition used to be a part of it. So now they become more politically correct, just like the NFL, and they're losing fans, and imagine my surprise.
Yeah. All right, Scott, you're up next. You probably already have seen this headline, Scott, and I got to tell you how jealous I am. Governor Greg Abbott, your governor down there in Texas, calls for an end to all red light cameras. So I have to ask you, does anybody in this country have an excuse left not to move to Texas?
I have actually had at least one family member who got caught by one of those red light cameras, and it's really kind of freakish. Because it's you can see through the windshield. You can see who's driving the car. It's a little creepy to think that there's that level of surveillance. And, it's one of those things that I think frees up the traffic courts. Well, it frees up the cops, obviously, because they don't have to be there all the time. And two, it frees up the traffic courts because once you see the picture of yourself halfway across the intersection while the light is red. That said, I don't think that if you weighed the cost of putting all these cameras in and the cost of monitoring them and the cost to the public over time versus the benefit when it comes to actual public safety, I think you'd find it relatively small. The kind of people who are going to run a red light either do so intentionally, whether the camera is there or not, or accidentally, whether the camera is there or not. And I would guess that a good 80 to 90% of the red light runners are accidental, and not a camera there's not a camera in the world that would change that. So yeah, I love Greg Abbott for many reasons. I don't agree with everything he does, but I think it's a good idea to reduce the scope of the surveillance state as much as is possible.
Indeed. my wife and I were in Britain. This has got to be 12, 13 years ago now. We were there for 2.5 weeks. It was a great trip because if you're going to go all that way for a wedding, really make it count. But I wouldn't drive when we were there, and it wasn't because of the left-hand lane thing, although that did freak me out. It's because of the speed cameras they have on the traffic lights, where they don't actually have to catch you speeding. The camera takes a picture of your license plate here and a picture of your license plate there, calculates whether or not you ever went over the speed limit, and then issues you a huge fine that you can't contest. And the reason this bugs me so much is it eliminates discretion, not just on the part of drivers who may have a legitimate need to go quickly, but also on the part of the police who, probably see 100 speeders for every one that they actually pull over who's actually creating a hazard. And I think taking the discretion out of everyday life is really just, it makes infants out of all of us, and it's just very, very sad and an adult like. All right, sorry about that.
Steve, can I throw in a historical insight to that? I took a ride once on a canal boat on the Delaware Canal, and they do a little museum kind of tour while they're talking to you as you're going down. The canal boat is being pulled by a couple of mules, and it's being dragged at 2 miles an hour or whatever. The guy who was giving us this little tour said that back in the day when canal boat was a serious form of travel, you would check in at a lock and they would give you a time-stamped card. And then when you got to the next lock, they would check the time-stamped card. And if you got there too soon, in other words, if it was clear that you had traveled at greater than 4 miles per hour to get there, you were in trouble. There was like a ticket for speeding on the canal.
The nanny staters, they're ever present from probably the dawn of man. Wow, I had no idea. All right, Bill, I want to get your comment on this because I think it really speaks either. I can't decide whether this speaks more to our political health or lack thereof, or our cultural health or lack thereof. But the headline is impeachment will be at the top of Democrats' agenda if they take the House majority. What does that say to you?
Well, it's certainly not a surprise. First thing it says to me is get out and vote in November, conservatives, and take everybody you can with you. If the Democrats take the House, you can count on impeachment proceedings beginning on January 20th or whenever they seat the
3rd, I think, January 3rd.
New Congress. Oh, January.
Something like
all right.
that.
Whenever they seat the new Congress, that's when it's going to be introduced. And if they have any kind of majority, then the impeachment proceedings will proceed. Now, as long as we manage to keep the Senate, Donald Trump is going to be president at least until 2020.
January of 2021.
2020.
Yeah.
Right. Because, as Scott will tell you, these kind of things have to be initiated in the House but voted on by the Senate. And same thing that happened with Bill Clinton. Republicans initiated the proceedings in the House. The Senate very quickly said,
went nowhere.
But they don't care that it's not about impeaching Trump. It's about tarnishing Trump. It's about throwing as much mud on Trump as they possibly can. And they'll do it. And I'm at the place again where it's like, okay, congratulations, This ongoing 4-year war of yours has gotten another meaningless scalp that means nothing to me and nothing to the millions of people that voted for him, and means nothing to the millions of people who are suddenly employed and making money who weren't making any money before under President Lightworker.
Yeah.
So, okay, yes, I think that will happen. I think if they take the House, it will happen, and as long as they don't take the Senate, then it's meaningless. And meaningless gestures is what the left is all about.
I tell you, though, Bill, I think you're right on the money with the smear campaign being the entire point, just to fling mud on him. We're watching the same thing happen with Brett Kavanaugh with the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings. Here's a guy who's moderately conservative, just like the justice that he's replacing, so it's not really going to alter the balance of the court at all. And the Republicans have the majority in the Senate, so there's almost no way he's not going to be confirmed. And this whole circus we've been watching, both by senators like Kamala Harris and by the penis costume wearing idiots in the galley, it's just about flinging mud and seeing if they can discredit a perfectly reasonable Supreme Court nominee. It's sad and un-Republican in the small R sense of Republican.
Yes, and I saw a couple days ago photographs of a woman who went in there to disrupt the meeting to disrupt the hearings, and then somebody followed her out with a cell phone, and sure enough, she walks up to I don't remember, it was a guy or girl standing under the tree, and gets her $100 or whatever that she was. I mean, she's just right there on the spot, paid for doing this, you know.
Nice
and this
work
is
if you can
this
get it.
tells me something. This tells me something. When you have to invent evidence for a case, you don't have a case, and you can blow yourself up all you want to about it. But if you can't find racism in the Tea Party and you have to make racist signs on the left and then take them to the Tea Party, then you are not going to win whatever cause you're fighting for.
We can certainly hope not. Scott, last question. Well, it's not really a question. I'm just going to throw this headline out to you and have you respond to it. It's from John Kerry's new autobiography called All About Me, or at least I think that's the name. And in it, he says, John Kerry admits that John Edwards was a bad pick for Veep in 2004, to which all I could say was, you think? How about you?
Yeah. I think the only thing that was worse was the guy that John Edwards picked to be his presidential running mate. I mean, you know, it's
Yeah.
I saw John Kerry on a talk show this morning. I guess he's out there flacking for his book. Yeah. And the first thing, you know, it's just the shock of seeing him again and going, holy cow, John, what happened to your face? I mean, it just looked like his forehead has just kind of melted down to the bottom of his face.
Oh, no.
I don't know.
Botox will do that.
It's one of, yeah, I mean, he should come out and say it. He should say, you know, he should do a public, a PSA saying, boys and girls, Botox. It's not what you think.
I thought he looked 20 years old. I was just absolutely astonished at how youthful and vigorous he looked. I couldn't tell that he had anything done. It was amazing work.
And the weird thing is, I mean, it wasn't a bad looking guy before. Now he's just kind of strange looking. Anyway, yeah, this is one of those memoirs that I guess if you release it in the proximity to when other political books are making a big stir in public, that you might be able to pick up some, you know, the guy's in Barnes and Nobles and he goes, you know, you can get 2 for the price of 1 here or something. Who even in the Democratic Party wants to read John Kerry's memoir? Is there somebody there who is thinking, you know, let's bring that back up and see what we can learn from that? So anyway, you know, the man needs something to do. He's no longer Secretary of State. I heard him on TV being critical about, you know, first of all, touting all the great things that the Obama administration did, and then being critical of how the Trump administration is scuttling and squandering all of that. You know, here's another one for the $4 book bin at your local Ollie's Good Stuff Cheap store.
I'm going to buy a copy just so I can throw it over the fence at the White House. That's what I'm going to do.
Brilliant. Brilliant. You know, you guys pick on him, but I don't blame Kerry for doing anything he can to look as youthful as he can, because, you know, billionaire heiresses don't marry themselves, and a man's got to do what a man's got to do.
A man's got to do what a man's got to do.
That's right. All right. I want to finish with a quote I found on Twitter just in the last couple of days, and I was actually kind of moved by this. The tweet said, "Freedom has no limits. Ideas and thoughts should never, ever be limited. Ideas and thoughts should only be answered by more superior logic. Any type of restrictions on ideas and beliefs, especially on social media, will lead to chaos and dictatorship. Hashtag freedom of speech." And that tweet was published by former Iranian president and madman Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, believe it or not. And that is your every third week reminder that these are Robert Heinlein's crazy years. We just live in them. Hey, thanks for being members. Thanks for supporting. Well, I almost said quality programming such as this, but let's just say programming such as this.
Let's play it safe. We don't need any lawsuits at this point.
No, we don't want to raise those expectations. We like to keep things safe and on the very down low. So thanks so much. We can't thank you enough. This one's just for you because I'm Steve Green for Bill Whittle, Scott Ott. We'll see you next time.